Hello everyone, this is Tactical Lich here, and today we are on the battlefields of Total Warhammer 2, and this will be probably our last time casting a full battle in Game 2 as well, since, well, Immortal Empires is right around the corner, and we'll be slowly shifting our focus towards Game 3. So for this battle submitted by Coops, playing as the Vampirates, they'll be facing off their Viking counterparts, the Norscan Pirates. So for army builds, we have a bunch of deckhand mobs in the front line supported by bombers using their explosions to counteract the lightly armored marauder infantry of the Norscans. Further back, we have the Shade Wraith gunners providing that firepower to counteract the skirmishing horses of the Norscan army, and guarding their rear are the elites of the Vampire Coast. A sturdy backbone of depth guards, one of them the Bloody Reavers, and also Sirens, a rather cheap source of terror. As long as they don't get hit by any magic, they should be able to hold off and even scare off any Norscan advances. In the tree line, we have a sneaky force of scurvy dogs hiding in the bushes. Now let's go back to the main box to check out the single entities. Count Nautilus here on foot, providing a bit of armor-piercing foot dueling capacity, as well as a whole bunch of zombie pirate deckhand mob summons. And then we have a mighty gallows giant here. The flamethrower Necrophax Colossus should be able to clear out marauder blobs in a quick hurry. Now for the Norscan army commanded by Cool Umbrella, we have a front line of marauders, very standard stuff, one of them the Icehorn Marauders. At the back, a bunch of marauder hunters with javelins, a reliable source of anti-large firepower that can also fight off zombies. A perfect counter to all the possible Vampire Coast monsters and Air Force. In the skies, we have a couple Feral Manticores ready to dive down and disrupt the Vampire Coast gun lines. And in the far flank, the Brutes of the Hound, super powerful unbreakable marauder berserkers ready to cut up huge mobs of zombies. Now, Vanguard deployed here at the borderline of the battlefield, we have a lot of marauder horsemen supported by the Mist Stalkers here. The magic attack will be super useful against the Sirens and also Shade Wraith gunners. Now that we're done with the Norscan main army, let's have a look at the single entities they brought. A Shaman Sorcerer of Fire providing Burning Hand as well as Flaming Sword of Ruin. Leadership-wise, we have Wolfric the Wanderer on foot, ready to just basically duel any single entities coming from the Vampirate roster, and that's basically for the army builds. Now let's get into the action itself. Personally, I find Vampires struggle in this matchup because Norscans can bring so many good counters to the Vampirate boxes. First of all, the Marauders and Berserkers are amazing at clearing out the front line of Zombie Pirate Deckhand Chav. And with their decent attack stats, especially with the Berserk ability providing extra physical resistance, they can easily beat the Zombie Pirates and get into the backlines, especially when supported by a bunch of Feral Manticores who can quickly silence the backline firepower, or there are just simply chariots that can push through the zombie infantry and disrupt the firing. And on top of that, even if the zombie pirates want to bring out some big giant monster to bolster their front line, unfortunately the availability of anti-large javelins and armor-piercing throwing axes means that these large chunky monsters are basically good practice targets for the Norscan hunters. Being so large of a hitbox, they will be easily focused down by the crossfire. However, over here, it seems that Coops has figured out a good way to counteract the Norscan advance, as the Shade Wraith gunners are pushing away the Marauder horsemen with the firepower. And at the same time, the basic box of zombie pirates are set up ready to receive the charges from all these Icehorn Marauders and whatnot. And a beautiful blast from the Gallows Giant here, obliterating a whole bunch of Icehorn Marauders, but unfortunately, he is a little bit too close to the front line right now as he does not have the greatest firing range, allowing the Marauder Hunters to start peppering him down with all those anti-large Javis. Even with the healing from Invocation of Nahek, it does not save him from being shredded apart by all these anti-large firepower. Now, the Feral Manticore has reached the front line and will be diving down to disrupt all these zombie pirate bombers from firing, and also a nice burning head ripping through the ranks of all these bombers and some of these Bloody Reavers. Of course, the Bloody Reavers do have the heavy armor to mitigate most of that damage, but The zombie pirate deckhands do not have that luxury. In the middle, the Manticore has dived into combat silencing the Vampire Coast's firepower, but Coops has made a wise choice, picking the Ethereal Gunner unit. The Shade Wraith Gunners, their physical resistance means that they'll be taking minimal damage from the Feral Manticore, allowing the Sirens to push in and surround the Feral Manticore, block it down, while the Shade Wraith Gunners will be hanging on to their dear life. At the same time, the Gallows Giant, who has taken significant damage from all the javelins, has retreated, using Invocation to heal as well as finding a different position to fire. However, there are a whole bunch of Marauder Horsemen, as the Scurvy Dogs right now attempting to push them away are being kited away, and there's one idle unit available to start peppering down the Gallows Giant as well. There's no anti-large on these mounted skirmishers, of course, but they still have really good missile strength, and the Gallows Giant will be going down soon. On top of that, the Vampire Coast are losing this infantry fight. The zombie pirate frontline is barely holding. Most of the zombie pirates are gone, and instead, the Death Guards will be charging in, using their anti-infantry bonus and massive weapon strength to cleave their way through all these Marauders. Marauders, despite the physical resistance from the Berserk ability, they won't be holding on for long, and that leaves the Marauder Hunters exposed to the charges from these Death Guards. On the other side, the Brutes of the Hound are engaging the Bloody Reavers. However, their lack of armor piercing means that the Bloody Reavers, combined with their hunger to heal as well as their damage resistance ability, they will be pulling out ahead in this engagement despite the unbreakable trait on these Brutes of the Hound. At the back, the Feral Manticores are now being shut down, one of them being routed earlier, and now the other one is slowly dragged down by the Sirens. More zombie pirate deckhand mobs are pouring in, hoping to bolster that backline defense with more bodies. But unfortunately, there will be other concerns for them as the Marauder Horsemen are firing into the fray, chipping away the health of these Shade Wraith Gunners. To make things worse, other than the Manticore, now even the Miststalkers have joined in this backline fight. Their magic attacks will ignore the physical resistance on these ethereal units and decimate them. However, in the front line, the duel is not exactly great for Wolfric the Wanderer. He is a great duelist after all, however, he does lack the armor piercing it needs to cut through the armor on Count Noctilus. And Count Noctilus being a decent melee combatant with armor piercing and also that magic support bombardment straight onto Wolfric, it equalizes the fight quite a bit, especially when Count Noctilus do have the hunger healing him every second he is in combat. Now, with the javelins and Marauders being pushed away, things are getting more finicky for the Norskins as the firepower from all these Marauder Hunters are now silenced. The zombie pirates are pushing up, absorbing the ammo from a lot of these Marauder Javis. Same goes for here, a lot of these Marauder Horsemen Javelins ammo are wasted onto these chaff. That allows the Bloody Reavers and the Shade Wraith Gunners, Sirens and whatnot to fight rather undisturbed in the middle, while all the Marauder Horses just wanders around the battlefield wasting their ammo all over the place. With the melee threat of the Bloody Reavers, the Miststalkers were being forced off, unable to finish off the ethereal units. Wolfric the Wanderer being surrounded by the summoned zombie deckhand mobs despite the Marauder supporting. He is wavering right now as the armor-piercing attacks from Count Noctilus seems to be a bit much, and his Marauder minions are not holding up against the fear on the zombies. So there will be more Miststalkers pouring in, hoping to equalize this fight, but this is not looking good as Count Noctilus' armor-piercing anti-lodge would be really great against Familiar Warriors. However, the Feral Manticore, regrouping from route, will be diving in, hoping to dive bomb Count Noctilus and get a few good hits in with the charge bonus. But now the Bloody Reavers are here to support, and they will be charging straight into Wolfric the Wanderer. Wolfric activating some sort of ability, yes, the Berserk ability, granting himself some physical resistance, would be holding for a little bit longer, but unfortunately the Sirens are here using their magic attacks to bypass his Berserk physical resistance, and the cheap terror and fear on these Sirens will be affecting his leadership. With the Feral Manticore routing, Wolfric's leadership can no longer hold up, especially with the terror from the Sirens routing him as well. On the other end of the battlefield, we can see the Depth Guards are still on their relentless pursuit against the Javi Hunters. This keeps the Norskin firepower away from the Bloody Reavers, who are now activating their Enrage ability, providing themselves 40% damage resistance. They will be escorting a routing Wolfric off. The Norskins attempt to save Wolfric by sending in some Marauders in, hoping to screen away those Bloody Reavers, but unfortunately, they simply cannot hold up against these terrifying elites of the Vampirates. At the back, the familiar warriors as well as some marauder horsemen were able to get into combat against these Shade Wraith gunners. The magic attack basically torn all these ethereal units apart, including the Sirens. Despite their wavering leadership, they are barely clinging on, as they are a regiment of renown after all with extra leadership. Count Noctilus will be rushing in hoping to equalize this fight, but at this point, the Shade Wraith gunners are basically done for, especially with Marauder Horsemen charging in, ripping them apart with the extra charge bonus. And now there are even more reinforcements for the Norskins, with the Manticore regrouping as well as some horsemen charging in. With no infantry support nearby, things might be a bit much for Count Noctilus. Yes, he did rout off one unit of Marauder horses, but he is still surrounded by a whole bunch of Norskin monsters and cavalry. Good news is there are still some really powerful Death Guards scattered around the battlefield, and the balance of power is basically held up by these Death Guards, some of the zombies, and also this one single Count Noctilus. But right now he is not engaging in a good fight at all, being surrounded by a lot of units, and then the Frail Manticore charging in, trying to snipe him out. A massive hit into the rear of Count Noctilus, doing a bit of twirly-whirly, hoping to cut down a bunch of more of these Marauder Horsemen, but a few more good hits from the Frail Manticore put him down to crumbling territory. Even with the Bloody Reavers rushing in hoping to support their lord, it was too little too late. Count Noctilus is going down with the armor sundering from Miststalkers debuffing his armor, allowing the Frail Manticore to do some extra damage. But of course, with the anti-large of all these Bloody Reavers coming in, the big monsters, the Manticores and Miststalkers are being pushed off. Without the monsters' support, the Marauder Horsemen are retreating from the engagement, as they have no hopes in beating the Bloody Reaver elites. At the rear of the Norskins, their hunters are still being pursued by the Death Guards. These Marauder Horsemen will be charging in hoping to use their Berserk ability, that extra physical resistance, to tank out a little longer, allowing the Marauder Hunters with Javelins to retreat, but they are needed to turn around and start firing into the Death Guards, because Marauder Horsemen will not hold out for long in this fight, as the Death Guards with their heavy armor will simply negate most of that charge damage, and using their impressive offensive stats to punch back and shred through all these Marauder horses. Of course, there are still more Marauder Horsemen alive right now, and they will be pulling back to support this fight, while the Javi Hunters will continue their escape. The cavalry will be circling around, charging into the flanks of these Death Guards. But of course, Death Guards being undead are unroutable and will fight till they die a second time. Marauder Hunters are desperately needed to turn around and shoot up these Death Guards, but unfortunately, the Horsemen are no longer holding up. One of them breaks. The Marauder Hunters with Javelins chuck out a couple volleys into the Bloody Reavers, but they activated the Enrage ability, minimalizing the damage from the Javelins, and at the same time, the mighty Death Guard has shattered all the remaining horsemen. That shoved the Norskins straight into army losses, leaving the Death Guard standing tall and proud on the battlefield. GG well played to both Coops and Cool Umbrella. Now let's have a look at the army performances. As expected, the zombie frontline got shredded by all the marauders and whatnot. Even the Fire Shaman Sorcerer was able to burn away some of the bombers, leaving them with only minimal value. Instead, all the heavy lifting were done by the Bloody Reaver Death Guards, with over 2,200 worth of damage value, and even the regular Death Guards earned well over their cost. Truly a solid unit overall. And on top of that, the Sirens as well as the Shade Wraith Gunners did some decent damage overall to the Horsemen and the Manticores, as well as the Scurvy Dogs pushing away the Horsemen, trying to disrupt them from firing most of the battle. Now, the Gallows Giant got some decent damage done, but again, the anti-large Javelin crossfire is just way too much for him. As for the leadership, Count Noctilus earned quite a bit of value using his armor piercing to duel Wolfric, as well as just bombarding him with the spell. On top of that, the zombie summons were quite useful in pushing off enemy units, as well as just absorbing the damage from the marauders, helping the front line to hold a little longer. Though mostly it was the Death Guards that carried this game, just holding out like absolute champs with their elite stats, the hunger healing them up, as well as their heavy armor. They were able to cut through a whole bunch of marauders, and the Bloody Reaver Death Guards were able to slice down all these monsters like the Miststalkers, eliminating the last of the major threats from the Norskin army. As for Cool Umbrella's Norskin army, you can see that the Frail Manticore was one of them, didn't really do too much here, but the other one managed to snipe out Count Noctilus, earning well over its worth. As for the Marauder Horsemen, as usual, they are solid damage dealers with their skirmishing firepower and also just running in, disrupting enemy missile units and whatnot, rear charging enemy units, so their hybrid role really helped them in outperforming other units in the Norscan army, as the Marauders here not really earning too much value, as after they broke apart all these deckhands, they were sliced up by the Death Guards. As for the Brutes of the Hounds, they were engaging the Bloody Reaver Death Guards. Unfortunately, the heavy armor means that the lack of armor piercing on these Berserkers will be minimalizing their damage, leading to a rather low damage value despite their bonus versus infantry. Now for the Javelin Hunters, their crossfire effectively sniped out the Gallows Giant, but I find their targeting was a bit off after finishing off the Necrofax Colossus, as they should have been crossfiring into the Bloody Reaver Death Guards as well as the Death Guards. Due to their lack of shields, they would take quite a bit of damage from the Javelins. With their huge missile strength, even the heavy armor on these Death Guards would not be able to fully mitigate that damage, and would have been able to severely weaken these Death Guards in the late game. As for the leadership here, Shaman Sorcerer of Fire got some kills with the Burning Head, but after that, he was sniped out by a combination of melee prowess from the Vampire Coast as well as the Shade Wraith Gunners gunning him down. Wolfric the Wanderer, the ships are doing massive damage to the densely packed zombies formations, also doing some decent damage dueling Count Noctilus, but unfortunately, he just did not have enough armor piercing to gain an upper hand in this fight. Hunter of Champions was nice, but remember, Count Noctilus did have healing to mitigate a lot of that damage, allowing Count Noctilus to outlast Wolfric the Wanderer. As for the Mist Stalkers, they did some solid damage to the ethereal units. However, after being surrounded by the Death Guards, they got sliced up by that anti-large armor piercing attack. And yeah, that's basically it for today's battle. Big thanks to Coops for sending in this replay, a really great game showcasing the power of Death Guards in melee. Their low unit model count can be quite problematic when targeted by missiles or surrounded by armor piercing units. If they get a decent fight, for example fighting a whole bunch of Marauders and whatnot, they're absolutely powerhouse in melee. And yeah, that's basically it for today's video and the final Total War Warhammer 2 battle replay. A shout out to all the viewers, including you who are watching this right now, for supporting my channel and watching all my Total War Warhammer 2 replays. Next week when Immortal Empires arrive, we'll be moving on to Game 3, and I can't wait to try out all the matchups between all these factions from Game 1, 2, and 3. And if you want to see more of Total Warhammer multiplayer battles, be sure to like and subscribe my channel. I'll be showcasing more battle replays, wild army builds, tips and strategies for Total Warhammer, and occasionally meme videos. And if you have any Game 3 replays you want to showcase, feel free to drop by my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be sure to check them out. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.